Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Cal, we took a little bit of a break last week. Lots happened, and I think today we'd like to talk about can anyone or any country or any rational minded person trust the United States? What do you think, Cal? Can you trust the United States?
Well, if there was you know, a Bitcoin on the table, you could trust Trump to steal it. But
Well, that's a
other
valid
than
point. I
trusting him to
mean, he
steal
did.
whatever
He,
they can, yeah,
he will grab your money, and he believes everybody's dumbasses, and he's just lining his pockets. And I like how he refers to it's the golden age for everybody, but it's actually just the golden age for him, his friends, his buddies, and those that pay for lickage and stickage.
there's such a scumbag. You know, you make a deal with, you look at the Gordie Howe Bridge as a small example. He wanted to fast track that when he was in power the first time. He agreed with the deal. As soon as the bridge is built, he reneges on it. The
Right.
art of the deal, the art of the steal. The man is absolutely untrustable.
In regards, I mean, Carney should never be dealing with him on that level. And that's something that I feel ashamed that Carney would even cut a deal. They have an ink deal, hold their feet to the fire, take them to international courts, and be damned. You can't cower to this type of individual. And look what happened. He cut a deal that's going to cost Canadians money, and now he's threatening tariffs for smoke going across the border because he's a bully. You gave in to him, now he's going to demand more. Like, I think he's talking 10% tariff on
I
everything in
think you're
Canada because of smoke. Instead of, a
I think
reasonable,
you're
rational
misinterpreting.
person would have said, hey, we'll send you some firefighting forces and help with things up there. That didn't happen. So we got some issues with that,
A
and
rational person would say that global warming is real and work towards a solution, but that isn't going to happen. But I think you're misinterpreting the deal on the Gordie Howe Bridge. I don't think it's as bad as it's not a big win for Trump that he thinks it is. And what it does is it clarifies the fact that you cannot trust the man. If you didn't know by now, your head's been in the sand. You should know he's a lying scumbag.
right,
That's all there is to it. Well, when you look at Trump's foreign policy, when you kidnap, foreign presidents, steal their oil, and promise to give them a percentage of it back, when you bomb a country out of the blue in the middle of peace talks, kill their leadership, and then anticipate that they're going to negotiate with you. In the middle of negotiations, you attack the negotiators, wipe them out, and so now you have no one to negotiate with, and you keep claiming all the way along that they're the ones that are the problem. They're the ones that are starting the fights. It's all bullshit. And the sooner that guy, thank God Lindsey Graham's gone. I hate to
yeah,
talk about dead people like that, but he would say anything and do anything in order to stay close to power. And
he
encourage.
was a warmonger too. He supported
Oh
wars
yeah,
his whole career. No,
and
it's really bad out there, and I don't know why Canada is even meeting on the negotiation table. You can't trust any deals that are inked because, like you stated, somebody comes along and says, "Here's $1 million, Mr. Trump," or "Here's $1 billion, Mr. Trump, to you and your family, and we'll hide the transaction." Uh, the deal's tore up. So now it affects us personally here in Canada. It affects the world everywhere, and I guess the exemplification of it is what's going on in Iran. I mean, that MOU was just a joke, like a total joke and a waste of time, and all it did was allow the U.S. to get more military might in the area and bomb things. And they're bombing near nuclear facilities. They're wantingly blowing up anything like that's a bridge or civil infrastructure, which are war crimes. And yet everybody in the world is turning a blind eye to these war crimes. We've done podcasts and podcasts and podcasts on this, war crimes being committed by the regime and it's the Republican Party. They're terrorists, man. And the sooner the world understands that these religious fanatic-based parties and political parties are being exploited by people like Trump, and they're the figurehead for these religious movements, the safer the world would be. And that's a big problem. I don't know what the solution is, but definitely ignoring it is not going to solve the problem.
I think it all starts in the recent history in any event with the fact that the entire world essentially has allowed Israel to get away with genocide, and when you allow that to go, it spreads, and people realize that there is no repercussions. You could be as horrible as you wish, and as long as your backer is the United States, it makes no difference. And here they they complain about the Iranians, they complain about the Iraqis, they complain about the Syrians, they complain about the Afghanis. Who's the terrorist? They
Pretty simple. It's the United States are the terrorists, and the sooner we label them that at the United Nations, the sooner the world can move on for improvements. And, like I read an article about President Jackson and the Cherokee issue. The Cherokee took the government to court, and they got a ruling by the Supreme Court, and then Jackson, 6 years later, put them on the Highway of Tears or whatever they call that, and killed many, many thousands of people, and it was against their laws that the Constitution and the courts had said. And he laughed, saying, well, I control the military. It's nice that the courts make a ruling, but I control the power, whoever has the military. And that means that the United States has not been a democracy since its inception. It was a war institution that was set up to quell a civil war, the North versus the South, and guess what? The Republican Southern Party is running the roost right now in the U.S. It seems to be all these southern states that are controlling government, the Senate, the House, and the President. So I think one of the things that the U.S. has to look at is maybe your Constitution needs to be brought into the current status of a democracy and redefine itself from the base up. And that's only going to happen if there's a massive revolt against pseudo-democracies and a willingness to change the laws behind your government and the way it's set up. Because this is pathetic. I mean, you're seeing the worst of the worst in a pseudo-democracy ever in the history of the world. And they're supposed to be the light and the beacon of democracy when they are the light and the beacon of fascism and terrorism around the world. So I see it as a major problem, and we're not having scholars write books and write means of change and legislative change that would impact how democracy should actually be set up around the world. We're seeing everybody turn a blind eye and ignore the fact that we need these changes, not only in Canada. Many European countries are, trying to make changes in legislation, but in behind the scene, it's still the oligarchs and the money pulling the strings and preventing proper changes from happening to deal with the real world issues like global warming, etc. So we got a major problem. And what's your take on some of those issues?
It's greed.
Greed, yeah.
It's greed, right? More, and the thing is, how much is enough? If you make $2 billion in your first year as president, you think that would be enough, right? You'd leave a little bit for the people who are on food stamps, maybe need some medicine and some health care.
Well, I think we can look at Elon Musk as a classic example of what a trillionaire is doing for the average person. Nothing. And he's making false claims that he built these companies. No, he bought those companies. He was already wealthy, and he bought them, and he did stock market plays. His wealth comes from marketing stocks in the stock market, not from the cash flow and productivity, which is minimal at best in his corporation. It's pumping a idea and a promotion that has no real merit in my eyes. I would never invest in SpaceX. You're not going to the Mars. You're lucky if you get to outer space, nevertheless the moon. So these type of farcical marketing maneuvers on stock markets need to stop. And I think when you start looking at democracy, capitalism has to be reined in by democracies. And when you have free control of the laws and the two sets of laws for the stock market, which is the capitalist hammer to destroy democracies, you've got an inherent problem. But that's another huge can of worms to open up and discuss on a podcast. I'd like to see more books on what democracy needs to do to change. I mean, Midas Touch wrote a book, and we'll give him a little bit of a plug here. Midas Touch is a great podcast, and they have close to 7 million viewers. They wrote a book, WTF America. What the fuck America is what it stands for. And Canada is part of the America history as well. So are many other countries, Mexico, and America is North and South America. So it's not just about the U.S. And I think that's something that we need to really grasp as countries around the world, is that the America is not just the United States. America is Canada, Mexico, and many other countries. So to label us with that terrorist regime saying America, no, we're not America. We are Canada. And I think that's something that we need to deal with on a world scale, that we are different. And I don't want to be labeled like the Americans, and that's the problem with a regime like the Smith regime getting on her knees to Trump. We're starting to get labeled like those fanatics in the south of us, and that's something I think is very dangerous. What's happening over in Iran? I guess Cal, it's
they're bombing the crap out of it, and they're bombing bridges, they're bombing desalination plants, they're bombing. They started off by bombing a girls' school and a basketball court and killing hundreds of children, and that on the first day you would think would cause people to pause and say this may not be a good idea, but all it did was cause them to go for more. So
if you're Iran and do you trust the United States or Israel? Can you really trust them to honor a deal? 3 times, 4 times they've had deals, and the minute they walk out the door thinking they got a deal, and bang, they're bombed, and that deal was just nothing but a joke, and they've used it to target members of their leadership to try to kill them off for the next round of dealings. I think the world has to look at the position of the United States and say we can't trust them with anything, and the lies that come out of that government should not be tolerated whatsoever. And I've seen an article that the United States now is sending more refueling planes to Israel today. It came out in the news. So if the U.S. is backing Israel to this degree, and they're sending refueling planes, they've got plans of this being an ongoing war for many, many months until the midterms. And that's something we stated, either last year and been stating for a long time, that Trump wants wars for the election. And he figures that's how he'll hold his power, because he can nullify any votes that come in saying, no, they were pressured because of the war and outside influence or whatever he's got planned. And nullify the results, saying it's tainted or been altered by the enemies of the United States, when the enemy within is the Republican Party. That is your enemy, United States. If you have to have it spelled out by a Canadian, I just spelled it out for you. The enemy within is the Republican Party. They are a terrorist party as far as I'm concerned, and you need to deal with your own house before you start destroying everybody else's house. And that brings me up to crash and burn. I think the United States is on a collision course with stupidity because their leader is notorious crash and burner of all that he touches, and that crash and burn is going to hit the stock markets. This fall, there's going to be a huge stock market crash. It's going to affect all the world. And why? Because the Strait of Hormuz is closed and goods aren't getting out and oiling is needed. And guess what? The reserves have been all depleted and they're keeping it out of the news. So your propaganda machine is keeping you blind to the fact that we're about to see huge price increases of oil, and the price of gasoline at the pump is going to go through the roof. And what that means to you people is the cost of food goes up, the cost of housing goes up, the cost of heating goes up. Everything you use is going right through the roof. So that's the crash and burn. And the Republican Party has the ability within 5 minutes to impeach this regime of people that are going to destroy the U.S. economy and the economies around the world. They can have it cleaned up in a matter of minutes, and they refuse to. So that's something you might want to consider. And the reason they don't want to is there's lots of profits to be made on a market crash because they get to buy up everything for pennies on the dollar. And that means they're going to come out even further ahead because they lined their pockets with billions and trillions of dollars and they can buy up everything. So we do have to worry about that. Jobs will be lost. You're already seeing that in Silicon Valley with the AI push. AI is getting rid of a lot of jobs, and it's like the joke is, having a computer guy program a computer to replace himself, and that's what's been going on. And Trump has removed any of the checks and balances because the propaganda machine that the Republicans want in place is they want AI to send out false information designed to facilitate them and keep them in power. So we have to be very careful with this AI technology that's aiding the war machine of the United States and the terrorists of the Republican Party to impose that war, crash and burn mentality around the world. So I don't know. You've got some other things you were saying about the Israelis.
Well, back to your initial comment, they're anticipating dozens of refueling tankers to be sent to Israel, and over a dozen anyways, and to be stationed at Israeli Air Force bases. It's for the use mainly primarily of the Americans. So what that tells you is that they are having trouble finding aviation fuel in the area. And so they're now bringing in these tankers to keep the bombing campaign going. They have no intention of stopping.
No.
There's nothing that you could say to them. You can't say to them, they've already said they had an agreement in place, no nuclear weapons.
No.
But the trouble was Obama made that agreement, which means it was poison to Trump. So they're awful. The Israelis just bombed. They killed some guy, some poor Palestinian, and at his funeral, they took out 8 people at the funeral.
Yeah, that's
the same.
War crimes.
They demolish people's houses that they don't like. It's
I
pathetic.
think we need to make some predictions on what's going to happen over in the Middle East, and I'll start by saying that the world should put sanctions on the Israelis, period, because they have shown they're not any more trustworthy than their partner, and their partner is the untrustworthy United States. They can't be held to keep their word on any dealing. And would you, as a Hezbollah or anybody that's fighting for your freedom from the oppression of the Israelis, give up your arms? We've seen them give up the arms in Gaza, and what happened? Indiscriminate executions. So I see that as a major problem in de-escalating the, conflict with Palestine and Gaza against the Israelis. So you give up your only means of defending yourself, and you're executed. That's not going to sit well with those that are opposing the, I don't even know if you call it a religious war, but the expansionism of the Israelis. So, I mean, if you can't trust any dealings, who is going to act as the enforcer of agreements? If the United Nations won't step up and enforce the agreements, the U.S. can't be trusted, the Israelis can't be trusted, Russia can't be trusted, China can't be trusted. Who are you going to rely on as the enforcer of the will of contracts or negotiated deals? There's no one to trust. Well, Canada, you could trust us, maybe, but we have no military might. Like President Jackson says, well, you can, pass whatever laws you want, but the president has the military power, and laws without military power are meaningless, which goes back to that world government that I want to, discuss and set up, because every country would have to pay a tax to it to build a world military might that can enforce contracts. The United Nations can't enforce anything. So I don't know. Your take on the predictions?
The Israelis will continue bombing, killing, and destroying Palestine until the last Palestinian is gone. The world will sit there and watch. They'll move to the West Bank. They'll start destroying houses, and they'll do it all over again in the West Bank. The world will stand by and do nothing. The Americans will continue their war on Iran. The Israelis want to see Iran broken up into a number of small countries so that they can never, get their act together as a major country. And eventually, and Trump is already talking about this. He's talking about dropping a nuclear bomb on Iran. Because apparently their bunker busters can't bust the bunkers. And when he said they obliterated the program, he was either lying or there is no program. There's no reason to be there. So, pick reason. One. No reason to be there.
My prediction is that this attacking of Iran, because there's many factions of, I don't know what you call them, over the different groups of people, I think it's going to unite many of the Arabian areas and Persian areas to say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And that, I think we have on a precipice of a movement where Iran might actually galvanize many of the countries to join them in opposing the real enemies, which are the United States that can't be trusted, and possibly the Israelis if they're the problem and causing the major concerns in the area. And that's a real risk, because if the, if Iran and Iraq, who are, been at war before, decide that they're on the same page, you're starting to get some pretty powerful organization. If other countries join in, Syria, the Saudis, and you could have a major shift in the Middle East where they're saying enough is enough. Israelis united, we can match you, and the U.S. is not trustworthy, and could that possibly change the dynamics in the Middle East? And I think it's a real potential that the U.S. and the Israelis haven't considered, that you're opening a can of worms where if the countries that are sitting on the sidelines decide to aid and assist Iran against the big tyranny of the United States and the Israelis, you're going to have some major problems, and then we're all going to be drawn into World War III and feel the economic pinches of that dramatically, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to block all tanker traffic out of the Middle East, and you might want to watch what happens to the price of gasoline in the next couple of weeks, because the reserves are gone. And I think that's going to be, my prediction is a major collapse of the economies of the world, and all thanks to the United States.
The only thing the Americans care about is the price of their gas. They don't care about genocide. They don't care about ethnic cleansing. They don't care about international assassination. They care
They're
about
a morally decrepit society. The United States is morally decrepit. And it goes back to this fanatic, religious, zealous, and passing laws like stripping women of rights and forcing a young girl that gets raped to have to carry the child to term because the rapist wants to have a child with her. This is total stupidity. And, people always tell me, Sharia law, we don't want Sharia law here. Well, I can tell you that under Sharia law, a rapist is executed. A thief has his hand cut off. There is no, putting a thief to be president and putting a rapist to be president. There's none of that under Sharia law. So, when you start having laws based on religion, which is better, the religious laws of the United States or the religious laws of Iran? Give your heads a shake. It's the same coin, basically, and some are better than others. I mean, try to rape a teenager in Iran and see what happens. Rape a 10-year-old in Iran and see what happens to you. I mean, rape a 10-year-old in China, see what happens to you. And yet the United States is covering up the Epstein class, where we know there's allegations of child rape, and their president's name is all over that file, 38,000 times. And if that isn't, smoke, where there's smoke, there's fire, folks. And, you got to look at Trump's wife's police statement where he raped her and pulled her hair out and everything. It was never retracted. They just never charged Trump. That means he bought off the police forces and bought her silence. And guess what he did with her body? He buried it on a golf course for a tax exemption, and then he keeps it unclean and unkept. That's fact. And when you put this person in power, do you expect anything other than crash and burn and him lining his pockets of his family and everything else? When this is over with, I think his whole family and anybody associated with him should be brought up on charges. And I'm pretty sure the Democrats have that planned. And where are they going to run? They're going to have to run to Russia or countries. And you're seeing them, that's why they're kissing the ring of Putin and other regimes, is that they can hide after they rape and pillage the United States. And that's another prediction I have, is that as soon as they see the power going, they're all going to these countries that will not extradite them to the United States. And all your money and all your assets that they steal off the U.S. citizens is gone with them. Try to collect it back. You won't. They will never allow you to collect the trillions that they've ripped you off for, and that's a problem. Good luck, U.S. It's a shame you're dragging us down into the toilet with you, but sometimes a toilet flush is needed, and the shit from the U.S. is hitting the fan and going to be flushed out one way or another. And I think it's up to the U.S. citizens to take care of business in such a rogue regime of fascists, and that's up to you, the U.S. We can only sit by and observe that you're affecting us too, and that's why we're discussing it on this podcast, is because it affects everybody. Albertans, Ontarians, Canadians, Europeans, every person in the world is affected by this terrorist regime in the U.S. backed by the Republican Party. So take heed, take notice, speak out. We have rights around the world too, I hope. Well, anything else we missed today there, Cal?
I don't know. You pretty much covered everything.
I think so. We'll make a short work of this, and we've been sort of lackadaisical on doing podcasts because it's summer and we finally got a few days of warm weather, and we've been trying to enjoy them, but keep having to talk about these horrendous things and events that are happening around the world that are affecting our lives every day. And we're trying to let you know that it's only going to get worse because of the Hormuz Strait issue. When do you predict that boots are going to be on the ground there in Hormuz Strait?
I don't think so. That's why they're bringing the tankers in instead of troop carriers and landing craft. They have no intention. They have no intention of landing troops. They have an intention of continually pounding the crap out of ground targets until they run out of bombs and missiles.
You don't think they're softening to send in troops around the Hormuz Strait itself and prevent line of sight targeting of tankers?
No. Why would you?
Well, yeah.
Like the Americans are the biggest.
Loss of life if they do.
No, the Americans are the largest producer of oil in the world. They're making a ton of money off of this disaster. They have no intention. That's right. And they can blame the fact that the gas prices are high on another country when they are the ones that caused it, and they are the ones that are profiting from it. When you're the biggest producer in the world and the prices have doubled, you're making more money than ever. And the poor pigeon
Trump
that's
has
paying.
the Venezuelan oil money going to his personal bank account in which Middle East country?
Yeah, they have no interest. Qatar. They have no interest in seeing this thing end.
No, I think you're right.
Trump told the oil industry that if they gave him $1 billion for his re-election campaign, he would make them all rich. He's making them all rich. That's one promise I think he's kept.
Yeah.
That's one promise he's kept.
But he's also doing it because it's making him rich with the money oil that's going from Venezuela to his personal account. And
that's only part of it.
Yeah, we don't even get to dig under the surface because there's no investigative bodies going to investigate when the regime controls the investigation aspect. FBI, CIA, all that is controlled by the Republican terrorist party, and they're not going to allow any of this to come out. So just like the Epstein files are being destroyed and hidden. So, it's pathetic, but duck and cover, because it was a well-seen play that they were going to cause this to increase the price of oil. Canada benefits a bit, but we're raped and pillaged for our resources, so it's going to take us 5-10 years to divert our oil away from U.S. exploitation, but it will happen. And we know elbows are up, and we're ready for it, and we're shifting gradually, and that's a great thing for us. Should have been done 40 years ago, but that's better late than never. So I guess that pretty much sums it up. My prediction: stock market's crashing, the economy's going to shit in a handbasket. I got no reason not to believe that, and the price of oil is going to push the price of everything through the roof. Jobs are going to be lost, and there's going to be lots of whining and crying and bitching, and all those people that supported the Republican terrorist party and Trump, the regime of the Epstein class, you brought it on to all of us. And we should never forget who you are. And most of them were very vocal, and we know who you are. And you all should be held accountable for allowing and participating and turning a blind eye, aiding and abetting these actions that are now coming back to bite us all in the arse. On that note, you got anything, closing arguments, debate, topics?
It's not going to get any better any sooner. We're watching the decline of the American empire. And if you look at how empires went in the past, the Roman Empire lasted, several centuries. The Greek, half a century, 2 centuries, max. The Persian Empire, the English Empire, they all fall.
Right.
and the American empire is teetering. And unfortunately, because of geography, they're taking us with them.
Yeah. On that note, have a great day. Share, like, let us know some topics you want us to cover. And where's our first guest? Come on, get hold of us. We want to have our first interviewed person sit on as a guest and pick any topic. Well, I'm sure we can research it and come up with an interesting discussion. Join us, contact us, and spread the word. Yeah, we're only 50 watch hours away from our first level monetization. I don't know what we get for that. I'm not even sure we'll get a cup of coffee out of the deal. But we put a lot of time and effort into this. It's been over a year now. And we've been trying to be consistent and relying on the subscribers and viewers to make sure we get monetized. And we're the 3%er. Only 3% of all podcasts on YouTube ever attained monetization. And next week maybe we should be there monetized first level. So we're the 3%. We should be patting ourselves on the back that we hung in that long to qualify for the 3%ers. On that note, share, like, and help us get monetized fully. We need 1,000 watch hours. You have 2,700 subscribers. That would only take an hour of your time to make us subscribed. Please watch and help us get there. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.